Some More Outdoor, Episode 23.
Welcome to Some More Outdoor, where we speak with authors, entrepreneurs, and business owners about how the outdoors has affected their life and their projects. This show is to remind you of the healing properties of the outdoors. So, are you ready to learn what the nature effect can do for your life? Well, here's your host, Brett Trout.
Hello, S'more Country. I'm your host and personal outdoor advocate, Brett Trout. And it's time to roast up your marshmallow, sit back, relax, and enjoy the treat I have for you on today's Campfire Chat. With me are Amy Marquis and Dana Romanoff. Welcome to the Campfire Chat, Amy and Dana.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. Amy is the co-director and founder of National Park Experience. She is a writer, editor, photo editor, and film director with nearly 15 years of editorial experience, including 9 years at National Parks Magazine. She is the editor of the Digital Naturalist, a blog dedicated to improving advocacy video storytelling. She teaches a filmmaking class at Boulder Digital Arts and recently produced a short film for the New York Times. Dana is also the co-director and digital photographer of National Park Experience. She is a visual storyteller whose images grace the pages of National Geographic, the New York Times, and other publications worldwide. While working in the Charlotte Observer, she was among the team recognized as a runner-up to the Pulitzer Prize in 2007. She has directed and shot advocacy films, appearing at live events from packed stadiums to film festivals around the globe. So, ladies, I've given my audience a little overview about you. Why don't you take a moment and expound on who you are and what you love to do, and we'll start off with Amy.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce yourself. So Dana and I are producing a film series called the National Park Experience. And it's a series of 10 short films that celebrate powerful and diverse human experiences in the national parks. We wanted to create these films because in 2016, the National Park Service turns 100 years old. Yet when you look at the folks visiting the national parks, they don't really reflect the demographics of America. So we're profiling young and diverse characters that represent communities that haven't traditionally been invited into these outdoor spaces and the national park system as a whole. With the hopes that they see these films, they recognize that they are very much a critical part of these stories and experiences, and they will get behind the park system and help the parks thrive in their next 100 years.
Dana, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I think that was pretty good.
That was excellent, yes.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know what I'm going to add is that it's kind of a new form of distribution and storytelling where we're trying to reach what we're calling the post-cable generation. So not so much broadcast, but people will be able to see these on all screens, which means mobile devices, websites. We're hoping for airlines and other types of digital distribution. And it's really short form storytelling. So the films are probably on average around 10 minutes, but really digestible, really engaging, and able to reach a really broad audience.
You know, I love what you're doing. I've spent some time around your website and just really excited about the stories that you are sharing, and looking forward to seeing all of them when they do come out. So we start off the show. I love nature quotes, and people tend to be attracted to quotes in general that are, especially on like Facebook and Pinterest and different areas, people are attracted to quotes that are on images of the outdoors. So I believe there's something about the outdoors that has a huge impact in our life, whether it's visually on a photograph or definitely when we're getting out there. Now, what type of quote do you have for me today, whether it be a nature quote or a mantra that you live by, that you can share that my audience can actually apply to their lives? So we'll start off with Amy on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to steal a quote from our debut film, Love in the Tetons, which is circulating now in film festivals. It's on tour with Banff Mountain Film, Wild and Scenic. So hitting some great cities around the country at the moment. But Juan Martinez was our character. And let me just give you a little bit of background on him before I tell you what he says. He was this kid from South Central LA that was headed in the direction of the gangs. And when he was 15, he had this opportunity to apply for a scholarship at Grand Teton Science School. He was accepted. He went out there, he saw the stars for the first time, and it just completely changed the course of his life. So, a lot of that film revolves around his backstory, but also, his vision and he and his wife's efforts to get more kids like him connected with these places. So one of the things he says towards the end of the film, which we just think is so beautiful, is this: nature is the most even playing field you can find. The trees don't judge where you come from or what language you speak. The river won't look at your economic value. The sun won't look at you any differently for walking in a certain way. And the mosquitoes certainly don't care about who you are. They're still going to take what they need from you. So, as far as how your audience can apply that, I guess it's just a reminder that this is a space that we all belong in. And this is a place that we can find common ground. And it really doesn't matter what your background is or what your title is or what job you just came from. This is a space that isn't going to judge. And there's a lot of healing and connection that can happen in a place like that.
So beautiful, and what his experience was like that in the outdoors. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. How about you, Dana? What do you have for us today?
Actually, Amy and I chose that quote together.
Oh, you did? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
okay, at S'more Outdoor, I want people to reconnect with nature and really get out there and start living with that childlike wonder again. So I always like to go into a childhood memory to really inspire S'more Country and to think about a time in their childhood, one of the most favorite times that they most memorable times, I guess you would say, when they were a kid, and how the outdoors had an impact on them at that time. So I'd love for you to share a story of your childhood and talk about what that experience meant to you and possibly how it changed who you are as an individual and really inspired you to go in the direction that you're going.
I have a kind of funny story. So I grew up in the suburbs in Lexington, Kentucky. It was really not a particularly spectacular landscape, but what was cool about the house I lived in until I was 8 years old was it was the one house that it was on this little kind of corner plot down up in a cul-de-sac, I guess. So it wasn't really a corner plot, but it felt like one. But it was the one yard where they didn't mess with the woods that were originally there. So we had a lot of tall trees. We had a couple stumps. We had like just great things we could climb and just goof around on and be really imaginative with. So I loved this backyard. And when I was about 5 years old, I decided that I was going to try camping or sleeping outside. And, this was camping. My family didn't camp. My dad was a fly fisherman, so we would take weekend trips to the Smokies and we'd go hiking. And I was definitely exposed to the outdoors and I loved it. But I think my mom just wasn't into camping in a tent. So, I decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to sleep outside and, the crickets, you could always hear all these insects at night. It was beautiful and you could see the stars really well. And, it just felt magical back there. So I got this big comforter and I got on our yellow, lounger chair and, was determined I was going to sleep outside, and I didn't. I got freaked out and I think I was a little scared of the dark, like a lot of kids are. So I ended up coming back inside. But I think what that instilled in me was, recognizing that I was passionate about this and this was a space I wanted to explore more and learn to become brave in. And in a way, it became a little bit of a goal, I think, growing up, was to be brave enough to finally sleep outside by myself one night. And I think I took my first camping trip when I was in college, so way, way later. And it was rainy and we couldn't get the fire started. It was just kind of a crappy experience. But I've had many phenomenal outdoor experiences since then.
Well, and you definitely remember that one from college. Even though it wasn't the funnest experience, it was still an experience that had an impact.
Right.
Now, Dana, what about your outdoor experience from when you were a child?
Gosh, I gave this a lot of thought, and I was fortunate to grow up out in the outdoors a lot, but this one story just keeps coming back to me, and I apologize if it's a little, I don't know, a little crude. But so I grew up in upstate New York, and when a lot of people think of New York, they think of New York City. But in upstate, in the Adirondack Mountains, which is a state park, it's beautiful. It's forest and mountains, that 5,000-foot peaks, and tons of lakes. So I grew up around there, and my family sent me when I was probably 8 or 9 to this little camp program. It was a side camp from a kind of dude ranch place where families could stay on vacation called Timberlock. And they had a program where they would take, probably 10 kids or so for 3 weeks at a time, and we'd live in the woods or in these cabins. And there was toilets, but our bathroom, our way of bathing was jumping in the lake in the morning and using biodegradable soap, and it was just real simple living. But one of the peaks of that 3 weeks away was a 5-day canoe trip and a 5-day hiking trip in the mountains. And so that was going to be my first time really camping and backpacking. So I think this was on a canoe trip, and we were sleeping out, and we wound up having, we were at a camp spot, and there wound up being an outhouse. And I really had to go to the bathroom, but I'd never gone to the bathroom in the woods before. So this is a 5-day trip, and I think come day 3 or 4, I was like getting to be in pain because I kept holding it and just was freaked out about going to the bathroom in an outhouse. And so my counselors, who I so looked up to, I remember they led, everyone got behind me and rallied behind me. And one morning after this big breakfast of oatmeal, I was like, today was the day. So we walked around the woods. They helped me pick leaves and, show me, don't use ferns, use this pine cone, but only use it in this direction. And they guided me on what were the good tools to use while going to the bathroom in an outhouse. And so I got up the courage and I went off in the woods with my supplies of leaves and twigs. And and I went down the trail to this outhouse. And I opened the door and I, squatted over the outhouse, and all of a sudden this plume of flies came up out of the outhouse, and it was like in the cartoons when they chase, it's like this black cloud that chases you, and they chased me out of this outhouse, streaking through the camp, screaming with my pants down, and I see that my counselors, Susie and Aaron, and they're cracking up. And what happened was, so we tried to practice these leave no trace principles, which, kind of take only pictures, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but pictures. But they had made way too much oatmeal that morning. And they broke the rule and didn't tell anyone. And instead of having to carry it back out, they dumped the rest of the oatmeal down the outhouse. And so it had attracted all these flies. And so that was my first experience going to the bathroom in the woods. How we can relate that to the viewers and to the listeners, and what lessons I learned from that, let's see. It's just a funny experience that really pops out, that really sticks out in my childhood. And I think just the laughs that we had and the community that was built, of these other campers that rallied around me to help me accomplish something, and the laughter that we all shared, around the campfire that night and for nights after about what happened. It's just funny, and how, I guess my body didn't feel free, but how free you can be in the woods, and how you can kind of reconnect with your animal self in some ways.
Yes. Well, and that story is so fun, and I've got such a big smile on my face. My cheeks are hurting, because it's just, I love what people share from their childhood. We all have these fun memories, and I know that people listening to this right now are just laughing and just really thinking back to times when they were kids and how much fun that they have. So thank you for sharing those stories, because they were such great stories on that. Now I want to go into more of an adult time period, or could be even just recently. I know you guys travel a lot and you've been to some amazing places. But Amy, can you tell a story of a time when you visited one of the most amazing places that you had ever been to, and really take us to that time in your life and share with us the experience and the effect or the impact that nature had on you at that time?
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. I've been to some phenomenal places all over the world, but the one that just stuck out for this story was, I think it was 2008. I was on assignment in Big Bend National Park. I was at the time an editor on National Parks magazine, but I was still kind of young in my career at that point, and I was just starting to take on the big assignments. So this was my first feature story. I met photographer Ian Shive on the ground, and we went out and tackled the story together. I think we spent about a week in Big Bend, and I had just come off a pretty traumatic car accident. And that, so it was an interesting time in my life because before the car accident, I had been training for a 100-mile mountain bike race in Shenandoah. So I was like at my peak fitness, peak physical state. And then I got in this head-on car collision at, 70 plus miles an hour on a 35 mile an hour road. There was this teenager who was just being an idiot. And I couldn't walk for a week after that. And I didn't, miraculously, I didn't actually break anything but a toe, but I had a lot of soft tissue damage. So it was a long, long healing process. It was a pretty painful recovery. So this was my first big venture kind of back into a physical space after that car wreck. And I remember the first day we got there, we went on this hike that kind of went up on this cliff and then back down by the Rio Grande and then up again. Big Bend is in West Texas. And there's this moment where I'm like looking out at the desert and it's sunset and Mexico's right on the other side. And like, it just felt like the whole world was opening back up to me again. And Ian captured this picture of me at that moment that's been on several annual report covers for different nonprofit organizations and stuff. But it just, I love that was captured because it was just this moment where I was in nature again. I was able to walk and hike and do things that I had a whole new level of appreciation for. And in the stunning landscape that represented so many things politically, conservation-wise, it was just an interesting story that we were capturing when we were down there too. So I think that was a very key moment in my career.
Now, you had been working for the National Park magazine for a while prior to the car accident?
Yeah, I think I started there in 2004. So it'd been a few years. Mm-hmm.
Well, what a neat story, and it's amazing what the outdoors can do for you as far as the healing that we go through when we get out there. So Dana, same question, a story when you visited one of the most beautiful places that you felt had an impact in your life.
So growing up, I wanted to be kind of like an Indiana Jones and an adventure guide. And so I worked in the outdoor industry and had the opportunity to do a NOLS course, National Outdoor Leadership School course. And this was their teacher, I think it was a teacher training. So it was for people that wanted to be guides with NOLS or serious outdoor guides. And I saved up a lot of money and took this course. I forget, probably in 2000. It was probably my last year in college, my last summer in college, or second to last summer in college. And it was in the Pacific Northwest. And so it consisted of, I think there was 10 of us or 9 of us and 2 leaders, NOLS leaders, and we went out and hiked for about 28 days in the Olympic Mountains in Washington. And I think Hurricane Ridge was the course that we traversed. So we had to carry everything on our backs, and we had some food drops. I think we had a couple of days where we'd run out of food, and we'd had planned so that food would be in a specific location for us to pick up and resupply. But those people were the only people that I saw for those 28 days. And it was, a really bonding experience. And we had to navigate through the wilderness and learn how to read maps and also learn how to teach the skills that we were learning at the same time. And everyone on that trip was a teacher or somehow working in the outdoor world. And it was gorgeous. I mean, just the Pacific Northwest, I'd never been there before, but we hiked to places where, we slept on top of these mountaintops with 360-degree sunset views of the San Juans and the ocean. And then, I don't think you could see Seattle in the distance, but that's, the city out in the distance. And it was just really, really gorgeous. So before that, what I was studying in school was anthropology, and I had just taken a class on, I think, American culture or something. And we been reading Alexis de Tocqueville, and he was talking about the civilized and the savage and coming to the U.S. and these savages. And so I say this because one of our last days out, we exited after summiting the mountain, and we exited through the Hoh Valley rainforest, which is so lush and so beautiful. And we all kind of walked out alone. I think it was our last day to just kind of take in nature. And for this past month, I'd been waking up with the sun, going to bed with the sun. Food had become fuel. The water had become a resource. That's how we cleaned ourselves. That's what we drank from. Fire was our source of heat. We had to pack light. We had the clothes on our back, basically, and some warm layers tucked into our backpack. And our packs varied between, mine was probably 55 pounds at the time. And some people, when they resupplied, got up to 90 pounds, the bigger people in the group. So really just becoming one with nature in a way. So I remember that last day hiking out through the Hoh Valley rainforest, which as you get closer to it becomes a very popular park and a popular day hike for people to walk in. And I was walking out alone, and I was wearing all green because that's just, I guess, the clothes that I had packed, and my boots and a green backpack. And I was tired, and I was way ahead of everybody, so I decided to just kind of take a rest in the ferns. and I was totally camouflaged in these ferns, and I could watch people come and go down the trail, and I could smell them, like the people that were coming in for the day hike. And I remember I could smell them. Like, I remember someone passing by and thinking, oh my gosh, that's Herbal Essence shampoo. It smells so gross. And I loved Herbal Essence shampoo. And I could smell their toothpaste. I could smell their deodorant. I could smell their clothing, like what they were washing their clothes in. And I walked a little further down, and they couldn't see me. That was what was so cool, was I was just like camouflaged in these ferns, just watching. And I watched this couple drinking out of a big Sprite bottle. And it was just like I was kind of disgusted by all these smells, and like overwhelmed by all this like stimulating synthetics. And I walked further down the trail and came to a creek, and my first thought was, great, I can pump some water, fill up my water bottle. And there's these people, and they have their shoes off, and they're cleaning out like their toe cheese in the water. And I was like, oh my God. So I hiked that. That was like my reintroduction back into what we'd call civilization. And I remember thinking, God, those people are savages. And how much more civilized I felt just being so connected to nature and the rhythms of life and the cycles of life. And of course, judging, I go on day hikes and I'll drink out of a soda bottle and wash my feet in a river now too. So of course, but after being immersed in it for almost a month, you realize that you are a part of nature, that your body, we are animals, and we are a part of nature. It's not like us and nature, but it's just really connecting with something that's innate within us. So that's my story.
You have funny stories. Thank you for helping me start off my day right. Very descriptive, and I could see where your storytelling comes from, both of you. Now, I came up with a term called the nature effect, and it's basically how nature has an impact in our life. And I love listening to the stories you guys tell about how nature, those experiences that you've had in nature. How does the nature effect have an impact in your business and life today? We'll start off with Amy.
Yeah, I'd say everything we're doing right now is about the nature effect. It's all about seeing these incredible transformations that happen when people spend quality time in nature, and making sure that everyone realizes that that's a right, that that's a dream that should be pursued and fought for and protected. Just on a more operating scale, we try to take hike meetings as often as we can. Sure, you can go to a coffee shop and caffeine up, but we live in Boulder, Colorado, so we're right at the base of the Flatirons, which are the foothills to the Rockies. And in 10 minutes, from our houses, we can be by foot on a trail. So we try to integrate it as much as we can into just our operating hours too. Because, filmmaking, there's the production part that's, on the ground in a park, ideally, and that's really fun. But the larger chunks of time and effort really take place at desks behind a computer. So we try to keep that worked into our schedules for sure.
Dana, what about you as far as the nature effect in your business and your life?
This is really the first time for me working with National Park Experience. It's really the first time that I've combined nature and my business and what I do professionally in some ways. I've always been a photographer, videographer, and done stories about cultures and people and around the world. And actually often those people live in more rural areas and are more connected to the environment and to nature. And I've always loved that and just been drawn to that myself. But the stories haven't necessarily focused on nature. And I'm an avid outdoors person, but that's always been separate. I haven't really brought my camera or my storytelling skills to the outdoors. So I've kind of kept those two worlds separate until National Park Experience. And it's awesome being able to combine the two, just realizing how fortunate that I've been growing up to be able to be out in nature and to have access to that, and to have been encouraged to take my shoes off and walk in the grass. And so now to help tell those stories of other people that are doing that's and how nature has affected them, it's been incredible. And if you have to film anywhere, there's it's not so bad filming at the bottom of Canyon de Chelly, which is a national park in Arizona, and filming from the base of a canyon after spending the night in a traditional home with a Navajo grandmother and seeing the stars and waking up to the first snow. And it makes for a really great day at the office.
So beautiful. I mean, you guys are so immersed in the outdoors, and you definitely say, both of you, like Amy, you said you try and incorporate hike meetings, because a lot of times with what you guys are doing, even though you're sharing what happens in the outdoors, there is a lot of time that you have to spend inside working on the computer, recording interviews and doing different things. And so it's neat how you guys have incorporated what you love to do as far as in your personal life, and incorporated that into the business to share these stories of people from the outdoors. And so I want to dive into the inspiration for the National Park Experience, because I think it's so important of the advocacy that both of you guys have for sharing these personal stories, and something different than what I see a lot of people sharing about the outdoors and taking pictures of. You're really connecting with us on an emotional level. So Amy, I want you to start out and talk about what inspired you to come up with a National Park Experience, and what did you find inspirational about the stories that you were searching for?
Yeah, so I was an editor on National Parks Magazine for 9 years, and on my 7th year, this is a cool thing. National Parks Magazine is published by the National Parks Conservation Association, which is a nonprofit based in DC. And when you hit your 7th year there, you get to go on a supported 6-week sabbatical. So I had been dabbling in film, or I guess we were really doing more multimedia at the time. And I was really eager to just get on the ground in the park. And I directed a few short films for my desk, but I really wanted to be on the ground, producing, directing, and just being part of finding that story and helping to develop it. So my husband and I had an Airstream at the time. We had sold our house in Northern Virginia before we moved to Boulder, and bought an Airstream and lived in that for a while before we put our new roots down in Boulder. So I took the Airstream out to Yosemite, and I stayed there for 6 weeks, and I made 2 short films about the park. The second film featured Shelton Johnson, who is kind of this rock star park ranger. He was featured prominently in Ken Burns' National Park series. He hosted Oprah when she went on her first camping trip there. So, at first I was thinking about him as a character. I was like, oh, he's too expected. I wanted to do something on diversity, but I'm so glad we were able to connect. And our first phone call when I landed in the park, he was going over his calendar. He was like, oh, there's this group of old African American church ladies from LA who want to come out and meet me and spend a couple days in the park. And I was like, that's our story. I'm picturing these really colorful women with these big hats and big personalities, and that's absolutely who they were too. So we captured their trip out to Yosemite, and during that time, they were reconnecting with the Buffalo Soldier history that Shelton had revived. If it weren't for him, it would have faded into history. But basically, these were African American soldiers who protected the Western frontier, but also became the very first park rangers. They were the first park rangers in Yosemite. So he revived that history and has been drawing African Americans to the park as a result of that. A few years ago, only 1% of visitors to Yosemite were African American, despite the fact that there are significant African American populations in the towns and cities surrounding Yosemite. So Shelton's done an amazing job to re-engage with that demographic, and we wanted to capture that on film. And it ended up just being this really beautiful, emotional little 10-minute piece. And that's the story that inspired me to move forward with a bigger series as we approach the centennial, because there are a lot of groups of people out there who they're just not connected to the parks or the outdoors as a whole. And we wanted to change that through film.
I appreciate that so much, because I notice when I'm up there, I live in Clovis in Fresno area. So I strategically moved here. We strategically moved here from Bakersfield so we could be closer to Yosemite and Sequoia. And one thing that I notice when I'm up there hiking and doing different things is that most of the people there are speaking a different language. And so I noticed that a lot of people that are in the parks come from Europe. They come from different places around the world, but few people that live in the Fresno and the surrounding areas in any of our national parks, no matter what demographic they come from, very rarely get up to the parks. By what you're doing, like I said, I just appreciate you getting that message out there.
Yeah, and it's just a start. I mean, there are a lot of barriers, a lot of different barriers as to why people don't make those trips. Sometimes it's a transportation issue, sometimes it's a financial issue. It can be a little expensive to visit a national park. So this is just the start of that conversation, and we're hoping that as we approach the centennial, there will be groups that help follow through with this idea that we need to pull more people into the parks. But Dana, maybe you can take a stab at the second.
How did you become involved, Dana?
Amy and I have been friends since she moved here to Boulder, and then colleagues working on some stories together. And both of us, with our growing interest in film and really our love for character-driven storytelling, she was telling me for a while about this vision she has for the national park experience, for this film series, and asked me to join her. And I think our skills complement each other. Have experience coming from the visual storytelling side, and Amy's a writer, an amazing storyteller and visionary. And yeah, we just work well together and are both excited to tell these stories. And what really also, besides just having grown up in nature and from a young age, recognizing that the demographic of people that go to the national parks doesn't really reflect the demographic of the U.S. and the growing demographic of the U.S. and just wanting to share that experience and invite other people, whether it's urban youth or recently immigrated people, to have that experience and to be part of the national park story is what really inspired me. And that the national parks, they kind of just serve for us. In this film series, they really just serve as a background, as a landscape and as a background for people coming together and for a country coming together.
So how many stories have you guys produced or are in production right now?
We have produced and are distributing the first film. We've done some scouting on another in Canyon de Chelly. And the first film is Love in the Tetons. It's not freely available online at this point, but we're working with some producers reps to get it in some different places. But right now it's mostly in the festival circuit. The Canyon de Chelly story would focus on Navajo youth who are engaged in the park and working really hard to carry on their culture. And we have just a number of other really cool stories around the country that are shaping up and we're currently developing. And we hope to be producing the next one by the end of the summer.
And Amy, what's really inspiring you from these stories?
I think this takes me back to that idea of being brave in the outdoor space. A lot of these characters that we're focusing on are pioneers of sorts. They're from communities that aren't necessarily on the path to a national park experience. Maybe there's some kind of outdoor experience that they have that's part of their culture, but it's not necessarily on this bigger, grander scale of what we all like to call America's best idea. So, I think seeing them step so bravely out into the space where number one, no one really looks like them.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, a lot of people, their families, friends in their community don't really understand what they're doing. They don't really get it. They don't get the point, and maybe there's not support there. And then I guess thirdly, just a lot of them are working hard to, rally the masses behind them and get more people out there too, which is also a very brave thing to do. So I think that's what inspires me, is just seeing, talk about visionaries. Our characters are incredible visionaries. And it's just really, really neat to see the transformation in them and how it affects their communities.
And Dana, what inspires you about these stories?
Well, I think it goes back to two things. One, I think it really goes back to Juan's quote, which Amy read at the beginning, that nature is this amazing equalifier. Once you're out there, you can kind of drop all these other pretenses, and what gear you have matters, but you really have to connect with a deeper sense of self. And so I love that. And then as a storyteller, why I've always loved being a photographer, doing video and sharing these stories is, I guess it's kind of a selfish thing, but I really enjoy entering other people's lives and the access that we have, and removing myself from maybe my bubble and seeing what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, and then helping share that with the rest of the viewers, with the rest of the world, what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. Because I don't think we can judge people until we can really understand what it's like in their lives. And so by helping tell these stories, we're entering someone else's life for a little bit. And I think that's a great way. I think if we're going to have understanding and build relationships across the demographics in the U.S., then we really need to learn to understand each other and realize that fundamentally we're all similar and we all probably want the same things.
Well, and thanks for sharing that quote again, because it's such an important aspect of everybody's lives and I don't have it memorized right now, so I'll go back and listen to it. But him talking about the equality and just that there's no judgment out in nature. We get so immersed in our lives, in our corporate environment, in our retail environment, and just working the 9 to 5 and in traffic all the time. And it's stressful, and when people are stressed, they get irritated and frustrated, and they can kind of lash out on others, and so just being out in nature, it's just, there's nobody out there that's judging you. It's just you to be free. So sharing these stories of people who have struggled in their life and how they're making an impact in the world is just so cool, and I love it. And I can't wait for more shows to come out. So we're winding down to the end of the show. So I'd like to ask a few more questions about when you don't get outdoors. I mean, you incorporate as much time as you can into the outdoors because it is your business. But when you don't spend time outdoors, Amy, what negative effects do you see in your life and business? And how do you make sure that it's one of the most important things that you do to get out in nature?
I get super stressed. And I guess, just the nature of our work right now, it's just stressful period, but I can be so much more centered and balanced and keep a good head about everything when I can go out and take a little hike or walk to pick my daughter up from preschool instead of driving. Again, we're lucky to live in Boulder where there are bike lanes everywhere. There are hundreds of miles of hiking trails. There's so many things that you can do outside, and just the culture of this town. It doesn't matter if it just dumped 2 feet of snow, people are still out. People are still riding their bikes to work, which is amazing. So yeah, I can be a pretty unpleasant person to be around at home. I just get stressed out and cranky when I don't have that access. So again, making sure that a hike meeting is on the table, or instead of driving downtown, I bike downtown or something like that. We live in a place that really encourages a lot of that.
And Dana, how about you? How do you feel when you don't spend time outdoors?
Yeah, I guess similar to Amy, I just feel kind of off balance and not connected, and maybe more in that rat race that you described earlier. We're fortunate not to live in a concrete jungle, but you can still get caught up in we say the 9 to 5, but come on, everyone knows it's more like the 7 to 7 or something. And you can get caught up in it, and your mind gets caught up in it, and everything just gets kind of tense. And so to be able to go outside, it slows you down a little bit, I guess. It makes you realize how small you are and the bigger picture.
So, Amy, what's the best advice you have for those who struggle to get outdoors because of either the weather or the limited amount of time that they have?
I have to say some of my most profound moments outdoors have been in really, really crappy weather. So as hard as it is when it's not beautiful 70s sunny conditions outside, I don't know, I just say if you can just take a few deep breaths and then push yourself, and you will always be thankful that you did. At least in my experience, I've always been thankful. There's something extra rewarding about braving the elements when they're a little more challenging, and then having an experience out there in them. And then, other stuff, as far as time, I totally get that. I get that. For me, sometimes I hate weeding my garden. I hate it. I hate it so much. But if I go outside and I just pull, like I take 5 minutes to pull up 3 weeds, I immediately feel better after those 5 minutes. So I think there are just little ways that you can work it in. It doesn't always have to be some epic camping trip or summit to the top of a mountain. It can be something tiny on your own property that doesn't take a huge investment.
Dana, same question. What's the best idea that you have for those that struggle with these issues?
Make it a priority somehow. Some mornings I'll just get up early and walk the dog with my husband. He's out there every morning doing it, and it's so easy and tempting to sleep in. But when I do it and I get to see the sunrise, that's awesome. Or I worked in an office for a bit, and it becomes culture to just eat lunch at your desk, or just go downstairs to the cafeteria, but walk to get lunch outside somewhere and find a park and just take a little time to just be outside. Or maybe even when you're driving somewhere, turn off the air conditioning or the heat and roll down the window and just feel the air on your face. And I know that's not really being in nature so much, but it's at least not closing yourself off from it. And it's a little bit of a hint at it. But I'd say just get out there and do it and make it a priority, and don't think that you can't. Don't think that you need this equipment. I mean, there's people around the world without shoes and wearing, just cloths covering them, and they're out there doing it. So yeah, just get out there and make it happen.
Well, ladies, I absolutely loved today's show and the stories that you guys shared and the experiences that you had and what you're doing to get the message out there, get the message of, like I said, what I call the nature effect out to people, and to really educate all the different demographics about the outdoors and bringing the outdoors into their life. So I'd like to end the show with some final words of encouragement that you have for S'more Country and how that they can connect with you. So I'd love for each of you to just share just a brief moment, some words of encouragement to S'more Country.
Yeah, I'll start. This sounds a little cliche, but I think it's an important question to ask ourselves all the time. If this were your last day on Earth, what would you want to do? And that's not always a practical question. I think that the point of it is important, which is being able to step back in the middle of all the craziness and say, when my life is over, am I going to be happy with how I spent my time? And I would guess that 100% of Americans or people in general would just feel more rewarded at the end of life, knowing that they were connected to something bigger than themselves and in this physical plane that is nature. So just really stopping to think about what means a lot to you and then living that through.
Dana, what about you?
Get outside and play. Amy's was so deep and profound. Hers was so good. I can't top that one.
Give them our website.
Yeah, that's okay. Getting outside and play is perfect, because I think that, like, we started off the show with a childhood memory and the times that we have outdoors and just playing and having fun outside, and really bringing that back so we can live with that childlike wonder again. So definitely getting out and playing, I think, is awesome. Would you like to add any more to that?
Well, if people need more inspiration, to check out our website, npexperience.com, and to look for our first film, Love in the Tetons, in film festivals that may be coming to them, and hopefully on some screens that are available to them. And they can feel free to email us too if they have some great story ideas, and connect with us that way.
Okay. And how else? Are you guys on Facebook and Twitter?
We are. Our handles are, I think our handle is NP Experience, but on Facebook, just look for National Park Experience, Twitter, NP Experience. And we've got a Instagram page too, which is also NP Experience.
And do you share pictures and things like that of when you're out?
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's great. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining me on the S'more Outdoor podcast and really inspiring others to spend more time out in nature and just start living with that childlike wonder again and just bringing back fun and having fun in their life. So I really appreciate both of you for being on the show today. So thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, Dana, for spending the last hour with us today and just really diving into what you guys are doing and sharing a message that's so important. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great.
Thanks for having us.
We've come to the end of another episode of S'more Outdoor. I hope you had a blast today listening to Amy and Dana share their outdoor experiences and how the nature effect has an impact in their life. If you'd like to leave a comment for us, head on over to S'more Outdoor and search for NP Experience. We'll be there to respond. If you know anyone who's struggling at work, maybe someone you know is stressed and things just aren't going well for them, I would be honored if you would tell them about S'more Outdoor. On every show notes page, there are buttons to share on your social media sites and one to email a copy of today's show. If the outdoors is a part of your life and you work in a traditional job, are an entrepreneur, own an outdoor business, or just love talking about the outdoors and would like to be a guest on the show, head on over to the contact page on S'more Outdoor and send me a message. Well, I hope Amy and Dana's story has inspired you to reconnect with nature and start living with childlike wonder again. Thank you for tuning into the show that's changing lives around the world. Until next time, I challenge you to do something this week to get S'more Outdoor.